Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something maybe a bit specific sounding at first, motivational climate in classrooms.
Mhm.
But honestly, stick with us because how researchers are tackling this, like in the study we're looking at, it actually gives some, well, surprisingly broad insights, stuff you can use anywhere, really.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got this really interesting paper. It just came out in Educational Psychology Review, October 2024. It's called Charting the Murky Waters of Motivational Climate Measurement.
Quite a title.
It is Past Approaches and Future Directions.
Right.
So, if you like getting straight to the point but still want the depth, this deep dive should hit the spot. We're going to unpack this key area in educational psych and see what really jumps out.
Okay, so our mission today is pretty straightforward, Rip. We want to understand how researchers have tried to measure this motivational vibe in classrooms.
Right. The feeling.
Yeah, the feeling, what have they found? And maybe even more critical, why does how they measure it matter so much?
And that's the key point, isn't it? Because even though, yeah, the source is classrooms,
Mm.
these core ideas
Uh-huh.
about understanding group feelings, shared views, they pop up everywhere.
So the basis for this is a systematic review. What does that mean exactly?
Think of it like this. Researchers gathered up a ton of older studies, all focused on measuring this classroom motivational climate.
Okay.
And they looked for patterns like what do most people measure, but also where are the gaps? Where is it still kind of fuzzy?
Right. And someone listening might be thinking, okay, classroom motivation, why me?
Yeah, fair question. But think about any group you're in, your job, maybe a sports team, a club, even just family dynamics.
Hmm.
How motivated people feel, how they see the environment, it shapes everything.
Hmm.
So understanding how we study these climates and the challenges involved,
Hmm.
it's surprisingly relevant.
Okay, let's dive in then. What is motivational climate? Let's pin that down first.
Right. So at its core, it's about the students' feelings, their sense of the motivational aspects of their classroom.
Okay.
And that includes both like their own personal take and the sort of shared feeling in the room, the overall atmosphere related to motivation.
So there's a difference between the general classroom vibe and how one specific kid might feel.
Absolutely. Yeah, the researchers make that distinction. There's the shared perception, that's the overall climate, and then the individual perception, sometimes called the microclimate.
Microclimate. Okay.
So, yeah, even in the same room, two students might experience the motivational push or lack thereof slightly differently.
And why are these perceptions, these feelings so critical? It's more than just liking school, I guess.
Oh, way more. It's huge. These perceptions directly link to how motivated students are, how engaged they get,
Hmm.
and ultimately how well they do academically. A good climate can really foster, actual learning and resilience. Ah, bad one. Wow.
Yeah, the opposite. So, okay, it's clearly important. How do researchers actually measure it? This is where the paper says it gets murky, right?
Exactly. That's the crux of the paper. There has been one clear, agreed upon way to define or measure motivational climate. It's evolved over time.
So different researchers have different ideas about what makes up that climate.
Precisely. Lots of different theories, and naturally, lots of different tools and questionnaires trying to capture it.
So it's not like there's one standard test everyone uses.
Not at all. That's the murky waters part.
Yeah.
Think about measuring, I don't know, team spirit. How would you even do that consistently?
Tricky, yeah.
There's that kind of complex, multifaceted thing. What one study measures might be slightly different from another, even if they both call it motivational climate.
Okay, so it's a bit messy, but did the review find any common ground? Like, were there things that researchers did tend to focus on measuring?
Yes, definitely. Despite the variety, two things really stood out as being measured much more often than anything else.
Okay, what are they?
First one is teacher autonomy support.
Autonomy support. What does that mean in practice?
It's basically about how much teachers let students have a say. Do they offer choices? Do they encourage independence? Do students feel like their input matters?
Right.
Like they have some control over their learning?
Right, that makes sense. Feeling like you have some agency, you'd probably be more into it.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the second common focus?
The second big one is classroom goal structures.
Goal structures.
Yeah, this is about what kinds of achievements are emphasized in the classroom.
Hmm.
Is it all about like really understanding the material, mastering skills, personal improvement? That's often called a mastery structure.
Okay.
Or is the focus more on, getting better grades than others, looking smart, outperforming people? That's more of a performance structure.
Ah, so like learning for learning's sake versus learning to compete or look good.
Precisely. And those different structures, they can create very different motivational feelings and behaviors in students.
So a lot of the research we do have has focused on measuring student perceptions of those two things: teacher support for independence and the classroom's emphasis on mastery versus performance goals.
That's what the review found, yeah. Those two have gotten the lion's share of the attention when it comes to measurement.
Okay, finding those common threads seems positive. But the paper also flagged gaps and limitations, right? So even with these common measures, there are problems.
This is really where the core critique lies and, yeah, where the murky waters idea fits. Even though autonomy support and goal structures are measured a lot, the researchers found some pretty significant weaknesses in how they've often been measured.
Weaknesses that could affect the results.
Absolutely. They raise questions about the validity, whether we can really trust the findings of some studies because the measurement itself might be flawed.
Okay, let's dig into that. The first limitation mentioned was factor structure. What does that mean?
Okay, think of it like this. If you make a survey, say, about autonomy support, you might have questions trying to measure different parts of it, like choice, rationale, independent work.
Right.
Factor structure analysis is how you check if the answers to those questions actually clump together in the way you expect. Do the choice questions really measure choice? Do the independent work questions measure that?
And the review found that studies often don't check this properly.
Exactly. Many studies just kind of assume their tool measures the different components they intended to without rigorously testing if the data actually supports that structure.
So a survey might look like it's measuring three different things, but maybe it's just measuring one general feeling or something else entirely.
Precisely. Or maybe two of the intended factors are actually so similar they can't really be distinguished. Without checking the factor structure, you can't be confident you're accurately measuring the specific pieces of motivational climate you think you are.
So for anyone listening, even outside education, just because a survey asks questions about something doesn't mean it's accurately picking up on that specific nuance.
That's a key takeaway, yeah. Measurement needs that validation step.
Okay, the second limitation, the multi-level nature of the data. That sounds statistical.
It is a bit, but the concept is pretty intuitive. Think about students in a classroom.
Okay.
Each student has their own feelings, right? Individual level. But they're all sharing the same teacher, the same classroom environment, the same lessons. That's the group level, the classroom level.
So being in the same class influences everyone's experience.
It does. Students within one classroom are likely to have more similar perceptions of the climate than students chosen randomly from different classrooms. Their experiences aren't totally independent. Data is nested students within classrooms.
And the problem is that studies often ignore this nesting.
Yeah, a lot of the research treats student perceptions as purely individual without accounting for the shared influence of the classroom itself.
What happens if you ignore that?
Well, you might misinterpret what's really driving the results. You might attribute something to an individual student factor when it's actually more about the shared classroom environment, or vice versa. It muddies the picture.
That makes sense. Like looking at employee morale, the overall company culture matters, but so does the specific team dynamic, right? You can't just look at individuals in isolation.
Exactly that. You need to consider both the individual and the group level influences.
Okay. And the third gap was about less frequently measured constructs. So basically, we're maybe too focused on autonomy and goals.
That's the argument. While those two are definitely important, are they the whole story of motivational climate? Probably not. The researchers suggest there are likely other crucial aspects, maybe things like teacher enthusiasm, peer relationships related to learning, how mistakes are treated that just haven't been studied or measured nearly as much.
So we might be missing big pieces of the puzzle.
Could be. The review calls for broadening our view, developing ways to measure these other potential factors to get a more complete understanding. It's like, only looking at engine power when assessing a car you're missing, handling, safety, comfort.
Right. Okay, this paints a picture of measurement being really quite challenging. So let's connect this back. Why does this focus on how we measure things matter so much, especially for someone maybe not directly involved in education?
Well, think about any situation where you need to understand a group. Let's go back to the work team example.
Okay.
If you want to improve team morale or productivity, you need good ways to figure out what's actually going on. How are people feeling? Why are they feeling that way? What parts of the environment are helping or hindering?
You need reliable information.
Exactly. If your tools for assessing morale maybe surveys, maybe interviews are flawed if they aren't actually measuring what you think they are, or if they're missing key factors.
You could end up trying to fix the wrong things or making changes that don't actually help.
Precisely. The principles are the same. Bad measurement leads to potentially bad conclusions and ineffective actions, whether it's in a classroom or a boardroom or a community group.
And the papers call for more rigorous research, being clear about validity checks, justifying methods. How does that translate?
It's about transparency and critical thinking,
Yeah.
really. In any field where you use data market research, evaluating a project, analyzing feedback, you need confidence in that data.
Hmm.
Understanding the importance of how things are measured helps you be a better consumer and producer of information. Are the claims based on solid evidence? How is that evidence gathered? Were the methods appropriate? It encourages a more thoughtful approach.
Okay. Now, the review authors themselves pointed out some limits to their own work, right? What should we keep in mind there?
Yeah, and that's good practice, showing self-awareness. They mentioned a few things. One is that their search might not have caught every relevant study. Well, they use specific keywords and database subject headings. If a study used slightly different terms for similar concepts, or was maybe filed under a slightly different research area,
It might have slipped through the net.
potentially, yes. Also, how articles get indexed isn't always perfect. It might not always capture the precise focus the authors intended.
Did they try to account for that?
They did. They supplemented their database searches by checking reference lists of papers they did find, using Google Scholar and looking at websites of known measurement tools. So they tried to cast a wider net.
Okay.
But they acknowledge it's hard to be absolutely certain you found everything in such a complex field. So while it's a thorough review, there might be other relevant work out there.
Good to know. It sounds like mapping this territory is just inherently difficult.
It really is. But acknowledging those limitations is part of good research.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up then. What are the main headlines we should take away from this deep dive into measuring motivational climate?
I'd say three main things. One, understanding the motivational vibe in classrooms. Super important for learning, no question.
Right.
Two, actually measuring that vibe accurately. It's tricky. We don't have perfect tools yet, and the landscape has been kind of messy, those murky waters.
Okay.
And three, while teacher autonomy support and goal structures are key pieces we focused on, we really need more rigor in how we measure them, checking validity, considering the nested data, and we probably need to look beyond just those two things to get the full picture, explore those less measured areas.
And tying it back one last time for everyone listening.
The challenges here echo challenges everywhere. We try to understand groups, measuring subtle things like motivation, perception, climate. It's hard.
Yeah.
It forces us to think carefully about what exactly are we trying to measure? How good are our tools? Are we considering all the angles, individual and group? These aren't just academic questions, they're practical questions for anyone trying to understand and influence group dynamics.
So a final thought for our listeners to maybe mull over.
Yeah, think about a group you're part of. Work, club, community, whatever. What's the motivational climate like there as you perceive it?
Mm.
And if you had to measure it, how would you even start? What parts seem easy to grasp and what feels, well, murky? Why might that be? Just something to consider.
Great food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.